good afternoon to in-house counsel and in-house legal professionals from all across North America and the world. And awesome, right on cue, Martha chimes in from Lithuania. So we are indeed worldwide. Welcome, one and all, to In-House Connect. My name is Shai Mahani. I'm the CEO and co-founder of In-House Connect. I'm thrilled to have you here with us today. Thank you for spending your breakfast time or your lunch time or possibly your dinner time. Not sure what the time is in Lithuania, but thank you one and all for being here. And thanks to our wonderful sponsor, LawVu, and our fantastic presenters today, David Lancelot and Haley Day, who are going to teach us about data-driven legal leadership. And they're going to tell us how to unlock the KPIs and metrics that can elevate our legal department. This is our 91st webinar of the year. And I'm wondering, are you here for the first time or have you tuned in to an IHC webinar before? I'm thrilled to have with us today David Lancelot and Haley Day. Starting with David. David is the CLO and EVP of Advocacy at LawVu. David is passionate about building and leading scalable, highly engaged, and effective modern in-house legal functions at high-growth global businesses. Over the course of his career in Silicon Valley, Europe, and globally, he gained deep experience in scaling technology businesses and their legal functions internationally through hypergrowth and into successful M&A and beyond. Joined by David is Haley Day, who is the Senior Director at Morae. For over a decade, Haley has collaborated with law firms and corporate legal departments to drive transformation initiatives, service their business as a strategic partner, and eliminate operational inefficiencies. Her expertise lies in guiding clients through change management processes, strategic transformations, and the implementation of technology solutions that align with their business objectives. As a licensed attorney, Haley appreciates the unique challenges and priorities faced by legal professionals. It is a wonderful thrill to have David and Haley on with us today. Without further ado, I'll turn things over to David to get us started.
Hey, everybody. Thanks so much, Shai, for that lovely intro. I got to say, I'm really impressed with what you've done with In-House Connect, and I'm really looking forward to partnering further because I think there's a lot of cool stuff coming up. I know that colleagues of mine are excited about your New York mixer, and I hope I can make it too. We'll see. I love a Christmas party. I'm British, so everybody in Britain loves a Christmas party. Yes, and I just wanted to say one quick thing. You mentioned CLE, and I really look forward to the day, and I'm 100% certain this will happen, the day that this sort of thing that we're going to talk about today is going to be on the bar exam. All right. I can totally see a day where there's a discussion of leadership, management, operations, and technology on the bar exam because it is so fundamentally important to how we run a law firm or an in-house legal function. Today, the bar exam isn't particularly relevant to most people's practice, right? So hopefully one day it will be.
Yeah. Luckily, we don't have so many law students in our audience, or else they'd be rioting, but I love it. I love it.
Yeah, when I talk to them, it's funny. They are always happy to hear that I think the bar exam is not particularly relevant. So as Shai said, I'm David Lancelot. I spent almost 25 years in legal leadership roles, most recently 10 years at building and leading the global eBay classifieds legal function. And now I have the real privilege to teach at the University of Florida College of Law, and I teach a course called International In-House Legal Leadership, which I think is really fun. Part of that course is focused on speaking the language of the business, the use of quantitative information, data, metrics, benchmarking, KPIs, and using those pieces of information to lead a modern legal function. So I'm very happy to be here today to talk about something that I am so close to and passionate about.
Well, and thank you so much for having us today, and Shai for that wonderful introduction. I'm very excited to speak to you all about this topic alongside David. As Shai said, my name is Haley Day. I'm a Senior Director at Morae Global. I'm a mom and a wife. I'm also a Florida licensed attorney that hasn't done much lawyering over the past decade. Instead, I've spent most of my time working with legal teams and their approach to technology, which ultimately means I've spent probably the past 10 years having hard conversations about change with people who don't always love change, but that's okay. We continue ahead. So thank you again for this opportunity, and I'm very hopeful that there's some great things that you can take away from our time together to empower you and your team to use your data strategically.
Thank you, Haley. I got to say, Haley and I are very aligned on how important we think modern legal leadership, management, operations, and tech are, just pushing the evolution of our profession forwards. So it's really great to have Haley here today with so much practical experience in this area. Quick agenda for today. Haley and I are going to talk about the benefits of using data and KPIs and et cetera, as well as some of the terminology that we're going to refer to. Then I'm going to go through a bit of an evolution of the legal functions use of data with some example metrics. Just to be clear, we are not going to spend our time listing metrics, so don't worry about that. Then Haley's going to dive into modern data practice, and we're going to talk about some of the dashboards that are available. Then we'll wrap, and if there's time, we'll have discussion. But of course, as Shai said, please put your questions in the chat. We'll keep an eye on that and try to answer them in real time if you have any. Benefits of using data as a legal leader. I think that there is enormous value in speaking the language of the business, right? Versus the language of the law firm or law school. If you want to connect with business people, you've got to speak their language. Gathering data in real time allows you to get transparency into what's going on in your legal function as well as your business. And gathering data over time allows you to build trends and insights, which will give you the opportunity to optimize the operation of your legal function, as well as, and this is because I think legal is probably the function that's most plugged into the most parts of the business. This will give you the opportunity to optimize the business and concurrently accelerate the business. Gathering data over time will allow you to see trends and provide insights, and data and the insights it brings will surface legal and operational risks, which you can proactively mitigate and hopefully eliminate. Having transparency and speaking the language of the business will allow you to communicate the value of legal far better than the familiar qualitative measures, and in particular, much better than the usual "we've stopped risks from happening." Data and metrics will also allow you to build business cases. And this is something that can you be excited about building business cases, Haley? I think I am. I think I'm excited about building business cases using the language of the business, because it's such a game changer to put those slides up on the screen in front of a leadership team or in front of the CEO or CFO, using KPIs and metrics that are impactful for your business leaders, and have them just go, yep, absolutely. You definitely need different resources than we're giving you now. So just far more likely to be successful when you're using quantitative information. And I think this is probably the one that's come into my sort of radar over the past year, maybe two, but there's this idea of building a foundation. When you're collecting information, data, in a structured fashion, as opposed to the way we normally do things in the legal function, all over the place on everybody's C drive or in some shared drive or in. I heard recently somebody had all of their pretty material contracts on a USB stick. Cringe. So when you're building a foundation, when you're structuring information, you're building a foundation for the future in this field, which is artificial intelligence and predictive intelligence. And I've had some great conversations, even in the last few months, with legal leaders who are reaping the benefits of spending the last few years building structured data sets through intake into a matter management system, contract, and e-billing systems. And now they're able to do some things with LLMs that are really powerful for their business. So those are what I think are the benefits. There are, of course, numerous other benefits. I thought I'd give a short list to kick off. And now over to Haley for some basic, what she calls basic nomenclature. Haley?
Thank you, David. And I absolutely think we can be excited about it, because we have to be the champions of our legal departments. We've got to be the ones showing the value. So the more excitement and passion, the more that's going to carry through in your leadership presentations. So I do call these some of the basics. We've got some definitions on the screen here that you're going to hear us drop some of this language. You guys are all familiar with these things, of course, but I wanted to take you through each one and talk about how they tie in together and how they impact each other. So your data is evidence for the story that you're telling. It's how you're going to show your department's value. Not all data is created equally, nor is it crystal clear. We'll talk a little bit about data hygiene in a couple slides from now. But most importantly, The data is the key facts that make up the metrics you'll use for assessing performance. Critical ways that we assess performance are KPIs and OKRs. No, we're all familiar with KPIs. Everybody has them on their annual or mid-year reviews. They're done at the individual level. They should also be done at the team and department level, and they should be tied to your business's overall OKRs, because OKRs are outcome focused. So tying your KPIs to these is an easy win for demonstrating value. A helpful framework to start with when you're preparing those presentations for leadership or QBRs is finding what data demonstrates how you're achieving your KPIs and connecting that to how it's helping the business achieve its OKRs. So including this at the end or the beginning of every presentation is going to help you push your agenda. You have a noble one that's being the cheerleader, that's showing the value of your department. And that framework is an easy win for always bringing you back to the North Star. Another best practice for achieving a world-class legal department is benchmarking. Benchmarking your team internally can be done in the spirit of we're collaborating together, we're learning from each other, we're working towards our North Star, we're working towards bettering the department so we can serve our business partners better. It also helps you know the internal benchmark details so that you can externally benchmark your legal department against other legal departments similar to yours in similar industries. So similar size and industry are good places to look. Having those conversations with your colleagues, whether you're at CLOC or Kinsero or IHC events, seeing how your legal department compares against similar legal departments is another great way to use and bolster those value propositions that you're having with your leadership. Also, it's good for helping you build business case when you need things like additional professional development and training or additional resources. And then finally, what we all hope to achieve at the end of all of our efforts, it's not readily apparent, nor is it easy to come by, but it is priceless, and that is insight. So all of the things that we do with our data efforts really does give us insight to who we are as professionals, who we are as a legal department, who we are as a business partner, who we are as a strategic partner at the leadership table.
Thanks, Haley. And I think right there, Haley's speaking the language of the business. So I think, as I said earlier, this isn't on the bar exam. They didn't teach you this in law school, and they certainly didn't teach you this in a law firm. You go into a company and it's okay, everybody's using this terminology. It's great for us as in-house lawyers to have this sort of foundation to operate at the business. We're going to move on now to an overview of the evolution of the legal functions use of data. In-house, in my opinion, in-house legal profession is going through a rapidly accelerating transformation. And part of that transformation is related to how legal functions understand and how effectively they use operations, legal operations, or any operations really, technology and data. And this transformation, and I'm sure we have a lot of international people on this, which is really cool. This transformation is happening at different speeds in different industries, different sectors, as well as different geographies. I was just over in Amsterdam, Antwerp, and London. And even within those markets, I can tell you that the transformation is taking place at really different speeds. A few cutting edge legal functions, and I put cutting edge up here on this graph, have data scientists and engineers in their legal functions doing predictive intelligence on the structured information that they have. And I probably should have made that. I just had to fit cutting edge into that little blue bit up there, but I probably could have put it just the E on the end of edge would be big enough for where we are as an in-house profession. Not a lot of us have data scientists on our legal functions, right? So I think the vast majority of in-house lawyers are just starting out on their journey and legal leaders. And I think that's actually a really good thing, because now is a great time to start on this journey. Back in the day, it was extremely difficult to pull information, to analyze it, to visualize it, et cetera. And it really required a team of professionals to do that from outside the function. Now there are intuitive and fit for purpose tools built for the legal function that take so much of this work off the plate. And we're going to talk more about that, of course. I've attempted to visualize this evolution. I take your feedback for sure, but I think the most important takeaway here is that we're very early for most legal teams in their progress to becoming a truly data-backed legal function. I wanted to dive in a little bit into the different stages of evolution. I'd call the first stage probably the old-fashioned traditional model, very law firm-like, and I operated this way, particularly back in my QVC days when I was general counsel of QVC in the UK. Qualitative, all I really had was hourly billing information. And I really couldn't justify my value beyond risk mitigation, right? I wasn't even thinking about, oh, we would have spent X, the opportunity cost of that was Y, which I think this model has led to this idea of legal as a cost center. And you know how our friends in finance will manage that. They'll reduce spend generally until something breaks, right? Because that's how you manage a cost center. And that results in things like G&A, general and administrative cost reductions or headcount reductions of X% per annum. And I've absolutely run into those on an almost annual basis at some of the companies I've worked for, or even better, finance consultancies brought in to help you find efficiencies. And I imagine some of you have run into this too, where someone's brought in to do an organization is brought in to do a big project at your business, and a little side project that they do is to help legal get more efficient by probably telling you to stay in your swim lane or stop doing the non-legal work, which I think all of us understand now, that strategic work that is not pure substantive lawyering is actually the truly most valuable work for our business that's driving the business. So really perverse result of this model. And some example metrics, just to have some on this one, hours billed, and I think, trust me, is the key metric on this one. Moving on to what I call the enterprise corporate model. This is where we become a quantitative. I wouldn't say the function is quantitative, but we were forced to think more quantitatively, right? This was about 15 years ago, maybe. And it took hold really throughout the major enterprises, the major massive companies who had basically the team and the budget to put this sort of methodology in place. And I think this was the end of legal exceptionalism, the sort of you wouldn't understand, just give me more money stuff, which I've certainly been involved with. I think that was overridden, particularly by finance. And I think this is one of the reasons that you see finance running legal, right? They run the business. Maybe they're from GE, maybe they have McKinsey on board. They're professionally managing the company, including the legal function, which is absolutely justifiable because legal is just as much a part of the business as anybody else. And now they're running legal also. And I think this also led to the rise of legal operations with a focus on initially, and this is quite a long time ago, but focus on law firm billing and contract management eventually. Getting a bit more into the details, enterprise corporate is something that really only enterprise corporates can run. They have to manage multiple legacy point solutions, which I think results in multiple manual processes. So I absolutely had to do this early days at eBay. When I was leading the function at eBay, classifieds, I'd have to do a significant amount of manual data capture, manual integration of the information, manual analysis, spreadsheets, basically, and then manual visualization, which is literally making PowerPoint slides and putting them up in ops reviews. And of course, I'm not an expert in any of those things. Sorry, let me move that. I'm not an expert in any of those things. So I required support from operations, IT, finance, strategy, and sometimes even external consultants, which resulted in a huge amount of friction and a lot of resource, which resulted in, I think, a limited, disparate, infrequent, and frankly, inaccurate reporting. When I'm asking my team, what did you do this year? And we put it into a pie chart, I can pretty much assure you that is not accurate information, right? What did you do this month? Was it more IP? Was it more employment? And I have to say that leads to, and in my case also, inaccurate management. Not terrible management, just inaccurate management, right? I think we were running our function pretty well, but we didn't have the accuracy of data, metrics, KPIs that our peers in the business would have. And our peers in the functions, right? Because HR is running Workday and sales is running Salesforce and legal is still working with emails and spreadsheets and PowerPoint slides. And I think probably the most negative thing about the enterprise corporate model, this relatively early days quantitative model, is it really perpetuates the cost center and cost cutting narrative. And some of the metrics that I use, just as an example, and I used these for years at eBay, and I thought they were pretty great because they gave me something to talk to the business about. to speak the language of the business, to have graphs and charts and even use a formula, which I think for lawyers is pretty awesome, right? So I would call these the classics: external counsel spend, internal spend, which you pull from HR, and then put that together as total legal spend versus the business's revenue over time. And you can actually benchmark that, right? A very inaccurate benchmark, the group of companies you can compare to is pretty broad, but still a benchmark. Also, lawyers per billion in revenue. And as I said here, the billion makes it really obvious who those metrics are intended to serve. And then if you're lucky enough to have a contract management system, total contract processed, or number of, the one I really used to love was how many contracts we are doing in a self-service or expedited fashion versus how many we used to do completely manually. And this, unfortunately, really perpetuates this narrative of in-house legal as a back office cost center function. Modern. I'd like to think that in the sort of mid-2010s, legal finally got access to systems that allowed for comprehensive real-time data capture on most of the things that we're doing via a business gateway or portal or front door, whatever you want to call it, and into a matter management system. Taking that sort of last chunk in the pie that was there, which I always think of as a very significant chunk, that is work that is not external billing or contract management, right? There's a massive amount of work that wasn't being captured by any system. This also eliminates a ton of administrative work, putting one of these systems in place, because you're not asking your team constantly to make reports or asking your business people to email your lawyers to find out what's going on for an update. Accelerates a bunch of processes. And then, of course, as I was saying, real-time and dynamic reporting, which allows you to manage your function in a much more real-time fashion. Not on a quarterly basis or an annual basis, which was basically how I was doing it from a quantitative perspective. It really reduces and eliminates a ton of resource, which I think is wasted in a lot of legal functions and operations departments in legal functions on things like data capture, integration, analytics, and visualization. And you don't have to beg, borrow, and steal from IT and strategy and finance to manage and support these systems. As much as I love partnering with the strategy team, and I really do, asking them to make my PowerPoint slides look professional doesn't feel like a great use of those people's time. And then it really accelerates the function, right? Because you've taken a bunch of work off the plate and removed a bunch of administrative burden. So our capacity is increased and our processes are moving faster. And I think lastly, and this is something that isn't always talked about when we're talking about implementing modern way of working and systems, but it really does improve the brand perception of the legal function, right? And totally true story, we have customers who have come to us and said, I have been invited by the IT team in my business to be part of an innovation committee because they see us as one of the most innovative parts of this business. And how often do you hear that about the legal function? I think that's a real game changer. And then lastly, in my story of the evolution of our use of metrics is, I think, this quote from a friend of mine in London, and she's actually, I think, in Cyprus now, but she told me at one point, your legal metrics are boring. And I thought that was a great way to say, we've been looking so internally for so long with the metrics. Those of us that have been using them for a long time, we've been talking about how we manage the function and telling the business people how we are managing the function. And I don't think you'd see your marketing leader or your HR leader or your sales leader get up and say, my people did this thing X number of times this month. They would say, my people have done something that has impacted the business in a particularly powerful way, right? So this is the movement from internal facing metrics, which you still need to manage your function, to more external facing metrics, which allows you to be a participant in the strategy of the business. So I think this requires a really deep understanding of business strategy, objectives and KPIs, aligning your legal objectives and KPIs with those business objectives. And then I think the thing that's often missing in businesses and legal functions is then capturing data points relevant to those business aligned legal KPIs. And then having a system, of course, in place that allows you to analyze and visualize those KPIs in real time right? Without having to call on 5 different parts of the business to get you that information. And then you are able, I think, to manage the function in business in a much more modern and effective manner. And even though it's trying to escape from this slide, down there I've got a sort of example metric. Now, I think the difference here between this kind of metric and some of the more internal ones is because it's aligned with your business's objectives, it's more of what I think of as what we do best, right? It's a narrative, it's a story about what legal is doing aligned with quantitative information that you're gathering that is relevant to what your business is driving towards. So I always use our old business unit in Germany at eBay because it was a great business unit. And we had a strategic priority to drive that business. And how are we as a legal function doing that? We've moved resources, and you can see that in real time if you're capturing data about what we're doing. We've moved resources and we're focusing more on that business unit. And you can see that trend happening. And we've also improved the contract turnaround time. And here's another graph on that. So moving from an internal to an external approach, that is my evolution of the use of data by the legal function. And I'm very excited now to hand over to Haley, who will take us through some of the modern analytics and reporting tools that are available.
Thank you, David.
Before you jump in, I want to just summarize our poll, which is really interesting poll, like how well
Awesome.
the legal team used data. And we have one single person in the whole group of 180 who says that they are cutting edge. We have 18% say we are modern, about 40% we are enterprise corporate, and then 40% are old fashioned and file cabinets and all, and they're proud of it. So thank you everybody for participating in our poll.
I'm totally taking a screenshot of that, Shai, because that is really valuable. And it really aligns with my sort of, I don't know, personal view of having spoken to so many in-house lawyers, and I'm sure Haley the same, right? Yeah. So there you go. Now it's up on the screen for everybody. I hope you all can see that. But I think that's really fascinating. And I will always remember sitting down with a friend of mine who was at eBay at a senior level, and she went over to Google and we were having lunch, and she said, "You know what, David, now I have engineers on my team." I was just like, gobsmacked, we'd say in Britain, right? Like, engineers, what do they do? So just fascinating stuff that most of us feel like we're 80% feel like we're in an old-fashioned or enterprise corporate situation, and 17% in modern. And yeah, that's fascinating. Thank you, Shai, for interjecting. That's really cool. Okay, Haley, over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks so much for running that poll. I was curious. We do see with our clients, most people fall into that enterprise. And a couple slides back, David, you were talking about the manual process. And that's one that always worries me, because even our most modern legal departments have a little form of matter management here or there, they're still requesting manual data entry on top of whatever they've requested their lawyers to input into the matter management system. So they're still asking them then to manually give the feedback so that they can do their presentation for the leadership or QBR, and that duplication of effort just leads to complications. So I wanted to talk with you all about just ways to visualize your data and KPIs to look at. And at Morae, we provide both legal managed services and business consulting for legal departments and law firms. We also frequently are asked to help with our customers' view of their data and how they can empower their team with the right data. So we walk the walk and talk the talk, because as a managed service provider, we have to constantly show our value to our clients. We use a dashboard like the one on the screen today. We use these same metrics for our business. And these are great metrics that we see our clients implementing and trying to track and put some data behind the work that they're doing. So this slide has some top areas we look at with our clients to help them shape their story. How much work are they receiving from each business unit or internal customer? Who's responding to what within the legal team? How quickly are the responses being provided? Regularly surveying the business partners for feedback is such a great and heavily underutilized tactic. I think sometimes people are afraid to talk or get that feedback because they're afraid of what their business partners might say, but it really can help you strengthen that relationship, strengthen that transparency and open door policy for your business partners and internal customers. And from that, you can also get the best quotes when you're trying to show your value. Somebody said you turned something around so quickly and it helped them close the deal, or it helped them get somebody onboarded more quickly from an employment perspective. All of these are great feedback points that you can provide in your performance reviews and in your leadership reviews. Volume and SLAs are also powerful markers for making your business case for headcount investment or professional development. And then finally, how you visualize your data can be a game changer. I have found through working with a lot of legal operations professionals that their dashboards are, of course, of peak interest to them because most of them are data junkies, but they really get their GCs and their practice area heads jazzed up about what their team is doing. These dashboards are great things, not only for you to see at your fingertips, a command center, but they're great for you to have them on display when you're doing your leadership presentations. Most of you probably have an enterprise legal management solution that provides a lot of these out of the box. LawVu is going to show you one that they have that's phenomenal. The one we have here is just built in SharePoint. People can build things in Power BI, Tableau. So there's a lot of different ways you can do it, but I think it is an exercise that really gets people excited. So my next slide here, and David, if you'll progress us to the next page. Thank you. This gives us just some practical places to start. So likely you all are tracking in some form several of these metrics already, but if you haven't or you want to do a refresh, I think this exercise really helps you achieve that. So I wanted to give you a few places to start, and that's really looking at the data behind the who, what, when, and why that's in your systems. And when I say systems, this might be your matter management system. It might be email or spreadsheet. If you have a work intake tool or a ticketing system, there's a lot of places this could be. And we all want to be at David's tip of the iceberg, the cutting edge legal team. We all want to be with that one person that answered that they're there. But the reality is most of us are working with what we've got. And for most of us, that's disparate systems, that's various approaches to work across our internal lawyers. So this is a great exercise. If you look at these 6 themes that you see on the screen, it's going to help you, one, not only empower your next value proposition for your legal team, but it also will help you map your data. So knowing where the sources of the data are gives you the power and knowledge to make the next move in modernization, which is ultimately going to be to automate collecting that data. So that may mean that you're going down to one system. It may mean that you're inputting an intake system. There is a little bit of change management there, but it makes your life a lot easier in the long run. And it does strengthen your service that you provide to your business partners by having some type of intake and something that lives outside of email and spreadsheets where things can easily get dropped or lost. So once you have the data points behind these themes, you connect them to things that matter at the business level. So I wanted to give you an example of something that I think is a strong way to utilize your data strategically. And that is, let's say someone in your legal team supports sales and they turned around 10 contracts in under 24 hours last month. This may be something that you could see in your contract lifecycle management system. You might have an intake system that you can view this in, or you might have to cobble this together via looking at some emails. But if you can get that number, you can get that time frame, then tie it to the deal value. So these deals were a collective value of $5 million in revenue. Your team's fast action and dedication to the sales partners assisted the business in getting 10% closer to its revenue OKR of 50 million in the month of September. So you can even add that normal SLA for your contract review. Let's say normally you turn things around in 48 hours, but you made a 50% reduction on these 10 deals that helped them close those deals by the end of the month so they could have that on their revenue projections for that quarter, for that month. Using that type of association with your data points is really critical because it's always going to help you tie it back to the OKR and show value in a really impactful way. If sales aren't something that you do, you could consider high-profile projects that your team is working on, mergers and acquisitions, anything that's critical to the business that you can tie to a mission-critical OKR is going to help really drive that messaging. And I think, David, you're going to take us now to a wonderful slide dashboard.
A wonderful screenshot?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely, Haley. Thank you, Haley, for that. I think it's worth saying what Haley's talking about is speaking the language of the business, being a business person with legal skills or a business leader with legal skills. There's so much more to operating in this way. And I'm super glad we're here today, Haley, because we're going to have some great conversations. But it's really exciting to me that on a broad basis, we're speaking to in-house legal teams about this way of operating, right? Because this is really going to change how our profession operates and bring us to the forefront of operating in a strategic fashion. On that note, I just wanted to show an image of what we at LawVu call the general counsel dashboard. We have a number of dashboards. This is the one that really pulls all of them together. Clearly, it's just a screenshot. I've included a QR code there that you can scan if you want to go to a page that has some videos about this. And then, of course, we can always show you the product if you'd like to see it. I think it's really cool. So this particular view shows information from across intake from the business, matter management, contract management, e-billing, and I think one of the things we don't often think about, the usage of the tool by your team and the business in real time, right? So you can say, wow, the sales team are really doing great on their use of the portal, right? They're really using it to check on the status of things instead of emailing my team, pardon me, over and over again. And I think this kind of modern dashboard is exactly what I always wanted at eBay and always asked the legal ops team for. And is now what's possible from a modern in-house legal workspace. And it's actually one of the main reasons, and I think I've told you this, Haley, but it's one of the main reasons I joined LawVu, right? I was teaching this course at UF last year, and one of my alumni general counsels was dialing in from Australia, 2 a.m. her time, bless her, and we're talking about data metrics and benchmarking in this particular module of the course, and she throws this dashboard up on the screen. And I was just, as we'd say in Britain, gobsmacked. I was absolutely gobsmacked. I could not believe that it was possible to do this now out of the box, right? This doesn't require an enormous amount of work, pulling together, integrating systems, building custom stuff. This is just part of a tool now. So I like to think, and I have this discussion regularly, you think of tech vendors going out and demoing product. I ask general counsels to demo this to me, because I find it so exciting to see that they're able to just throw this up on the screen and manage their function in real time. I think it's worth imagining what you could do if you could manage your function using that kind of tool in a team meeting or a leadership team meeting. So in order to wrap up here, I think if we have any further questions, we'll take them next. But I think the key takeaways and prerequisites for success for managing your function in a more modern way using data metrics, KPIs and benchmarking is to start with an understanding of your business's strategy and aligning your legal purpose, which I'd like to think is to be a competitive advantage to your business, and your objectives as a function with that business strategy. And this stuff I absolutely love talking about. So if anybody's interested, please drop me a line. And then I think concurrently, of course, you need to deploy a system that collects data in a seamless fashion in real time, right? Via intake, put some of the work onto the hands of the business into a matter management tool and the associated legal workspace tools. I always say this, but you can't do one without the other, right? You can't be a purpose-driven legal function full of business people with legal skills who are spending a lot of time building context with their business unless you have an engine room, a scalable engine room that allows you to take a bunch of the admin work off the plate and accelerate the function in the business. I think it's absolutely critical that you ensure any system that you evaluate has out-of-the-box analytics and impactful visualization that's intuitive to use. The general counsel, legal leadership, legal operations, of course, should be able to to run those things without any additional assistance from IT, finance, strategy, et cetera. And then begin capturing data points that are impactful for your internal and business aligned objectives, right? Align those data points all the way up the ladder to the business strategy. And then I think manage the legal function as a modern strategic function. Step out of the back office and become that strategic function that we absolutely should be and can be. And as I said earlier, tell persuasive stories about the value of legal, which is really what we're best at. And so thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you so much, Haley, for joining me and Shai. And we'll go on to the discussion slide. I've included that QR code in this slide if you're interested in looking at that legal leadership page and some of the dashboard stuff. Another poll. Thank you, Shai. And I've also included here, and I think, Shai, we should be easily able to share some additional materials. The QR code's still up there. So happy to chat now and happy to share this information afterwards.
Awesome. So I just want to say thank you, David and Haley, for a great program. We have a lot of great questions, comments in the chat. Haley, I saw that you were participating. And folks, if you're interested in learning more about LawVu, it sounds like we have a really motivated group on who's already forward thinking about their data. Feel free to say yes to the poll and we'll connect you. But first, to the chat where we have lots of great questions. Haley, I saw that you answered a question. Do you want to tackle that one?
Yeah, so many of the questions, and to David's point on one of his slides about being SaaSified, your SaaS solutions, your intake, your legal matter management, your contract lifecycle management should help you in automating the collection of these data points. One thing that's critical to me when I'm working with my clients, though, if you're fortunate to have these systems, let's make sure you're optimizing your use of the system. Right? That's one. If you don't have the systems, let's triage where the biggest bang for your buck is in getting a system. Is it contract lifecycle management? Is it intake? What data behind those is most powerful, right? And then if you have multiple systems, like many people do, how can we integrate? So to Kirk's point, how can we automate, right? Because what we don't want is that we're constantly asking our lawyers and our legal professionals in-house to not only go and enter their things in business as usual in those systems, but then give me feedback on my template or my worksheet. So that double manual data entry can be quite painful, and it leads to the downfall of the SaaS, regardless of how good the SaaS is, and it leads to the user adoption issues. So hopefully those things are something that you can get in place or you have a goal for. And if you already have them, thinking about how you can optimize them is a critical way to then automating that process. So there was lots of good questions. I see David's answering some about LawVu. So Ken says, without a CLM or matter management, what options could a legal team use to gather data in terms of workload, contract handling, short of having another lawyer manually enter? There will be some manual if you don't have any of those things, right? That's also something you could probably offload, Ken, if you guys ever needed additional resources. If you had a contractor come in and help you pull that data together, they can go and find it in your systems. That likely lives in email heavily, right? So there's some email triaging we could do. But if you don't have anything at all, there are great things that you can start with that are fairly low lifts, like smart sheets. David, I'm sure you have some things that you've used over the years when you had low resources or didn't have the right resources.
Yeah, it's a difficult situation to have to do that manually. And I had the benefit of having a contract management system at eBay and an ops team with some e-billing information. But the issue for me was I just did not have the bandwidth to go out and wrangle 5 different functions together to pull information and then do the analytics and the visualization myself. I literally was adding stuff up on my phone. And you know how it is, right? It's, oh, we'll just pull some information from the e-billing tool. Oh, we switched tools 3 years ago and we don't have information from before then. And so that's going to make it difficult for me to get a 5-year trend on spend, right? So very challenging situation, but I think it's absolutely crucial to think this way. I think one of the things that I probably could have touched on more was changing, like the mindset shift isn't just about, oh, I need operations. When you're becoming a business person with legal skills, you're probably already a business person with legal skills, or when you're going down that path, it's this idea, and I've often wondered how this happened, but this idea of that piece of information that I just heard, I should capture and I should prepare somewhere a list of things that I'm going to talk about in the next leadership team meeting or ops review meeting, right? This is where we have value to the business that's aligned with the strategy, and moving that sort of way of thinking out to your legal team, everybody who's on the team, right? Hey, we should all be saying that was a win for legal, right? That was a quantitative win for legal that we can put up on the board. And it's things, something happens and you're in the trenches and you just go to strategy. Hey, what would have happened if we didn't do that? What would have been the impact on the business for that? Oh, that'd be $70 million. Okay, great. Let's capture that. Let's put it on that PowerPoint slide and keep it for
David.
later.
That was in the chat. Somebody was saying, what about when speed isn't the right metric? And that's so critical. It's that very example David just gave. You helped mitigate risk. There was some type of save. There's still a win there. And I think that's a really powerful way to look at it, because speed is not always what we want. It's not always in favor in the business. And again, this is your agenda. It's your prerogative. You use the metrics that make sense for your department to show value to the business. And sometimes that's going to be connecting something to a deal size. And sometimes it's going to be connecting something to why we didn't turn something around in our normal time frame, why something took longer.
Yeah, there's a question here about SAP Ariba. I have unfortunately spent a lot of time with SAP Ariba, and I actually don't know the answer to that question. Sorry.
All of you, I know the answer to that. It does integrate
Okay.
SAP
Oh, wow. Oh, boy.
We
Well,
are
that's
of
great.
LawVu
I guess
at
that's
Morae, as well as many other ELM systems. SAP Ariba is very popular, and LawVu's absolutely can integrate with that. LawVu has wonderful integrations, which I think is important anytime you guys are surveying for new tech, is to consider that, because most people, but nobody has a one-stop shop. We all work across disparate systems to some form or fashion, and depending on the industry and the size of your department and company, you're going to have even more. And that's just the nature of the beast. So having a solution that is very integration friendly, has great APIs, is good. There's also things called middleware like Boomi or MuleSoft that you can utilize to assist you with your integrations. That really is the critical piece to tying everything together and making the most automation process possible.
Yeah, I think the philosophy of the vendor that you're dealing with, are they trying to capture and ring fence your information forever? We've unfortunately had customers who've been stuck with systems where they're trying to get off the system and the vendor is saying, oh, we didn't tell you, but to get your data from us, it's going to cost you $200,000 or something, right? Think about those things on the way in. I think a modern vendor should be a lot like any modern SaaS product you use as a consumer, right? The product should be intuitive. It should be easy to use. It should be drag and drop. You should not require any third party to be training your operations team on how to use it. There shouldn't be any coding involved. And then when you're using it, it should be a lot like when you use LinkedIn. It should have that kind of level of ease of use. And if you want to take your data out of it and you want to move to a new system, that should be part of the service. I think that those are all really important from a due diligence perspective, because it's a really different world now from those legacy systems, not to name the one that we previously said the name of. Some of those older systems are very crunchy to use and require however many man hours of dev time to manipulate. Things are very different now. I think we're almost done, Shai, with our time. Do we have any more questions that we can answer while we're on?
One more question, and I don't know if maybe we touched on this, but David Gilmartin had a question about measuring turnaround time is challenging. What's your rule of thumb? Do you look at contract submission, the contract signing? Are you able to break out the actual time in legal? I'm sure you are, but curious your and Haley's thoughts on this.
Sure. From my perspective, absolutely, we want to see and be able to communicate and hopefully visualize impactfully that documents, matters, etc., are either with legal or not with legal. And I think internally or externally, right? Who's using the resources internally? Are we being chased by the sales team 500 times on something that's sitting with a third party, right? Absolutely, you want to be able to do that. And I've very recently been speaking to someone from our product team just to give them some good background on what lawyers, in-house lawyers and legal leaders want from that kind of system, right? It's a very valuable data point, I think. And on top of that, it's not just about time, right? Obviously, it's not just about time. Getting things done fast isn't the be all and end all of our function, right? We are able to define what's important from a legal perspective based on the business's strategy. And in some cases, it will just be turnaround time. But I would suggest the turnaround time is better tackled by building out processes and automation and policies and not doing things, right? And focusing on what's strategically important. Things that just need to be turned really quickly, make it something the sales team is able to do, as opposed to legal has to get involved with, right? And then spend as much effort as possible on what's strategic and impactful. I know, easier said than done. Happy to talk more about that.
Yeah, and I was thinking that I think I responded to David, but I did want to just build on that a little bit. Sometimes looking at the contract submission to contract signing isn't the best metric. I think it's better to look at it from turn to turn, because you've got to look at what legal has control over. And that is you've received the red lines from the third party or from your internal business partner, likely. What date did you receive that? That should be in your CLM or your intake system. And if nothing else, it's definitely in your email inbox. And then how quickly did you return that to them? And then each time it comes and goes. If you don't have a system to track that and you track it manually, it's painful, yes, but I think it is a good exercise to do once because it gives you the power of that data. And then it also helps you build the business case of why getting some type of intake system would then drive that process to be more smooth and give you more transparency into that workload. I don't think it
Very good point, Haley. Very good point.
Signature. Yeah. Signature is great. That's what everybody wants, right? Depending on the department they're in. But I think submission to when you return it is the most critical piece.
But I think it's just a super good point that at some point you may have to do things unscalably, the unscalable, such that you can build that business case, which I love, to put the scalable process in place. And I think there's lots of ways to do that, including using a consultancy to help you collect that information, right? And contact us and we will talk more about that for sure.
Awesome. Speaking of unscalability, I want to touch on Yashkar's question. I saw you tackled it in the chat, but Yashkar is saying that he's curious about LawVu. His business uses a lot of different custom contracts for different transactions. How can LawVu handle that? The answer is yes, and curious how, and if you want to expand on that a little bit.
And first of all, how awesome is it that somebody from Johannesburg is on this? That is so cool. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. I used to be the general counsel of eBay Classifieds, which included Gumtree South Africa. So I have a real affinity for the country. But yes, absolutely. That's the bread and butter of our platform, is operating in that way with multiple. I was literally just at two very large enterprises in Europe who are doing that most of the time. Custom stuff across multiple business units with cooperation and things like approval flows and automation of intake such that things go to the right business unit first, those kind of things. Yeah, it's absolutely built to do that.
Yeah, and Yashkar, to your scenario, I also think having something, even though you do a lot of bespoke transactions, you likely have a playbook or you have at least a set of guidelines that your team tries to follow. Establish that in a playbook. There's a lot of great solutions that you can use in conjunction with LawVu to manage the contracts that can help you with the drafting of that, have some AI components, have some machine learning if they're not fully AI. And I think LawVu also has a built-in system for that as well that you guys use.
Yep.
Is it Black Boiler, David?
Yep, for redlining, for
Very
sure.
cool. Very cool. So I'd say a lot of people feel that they don't do anything that is run of the mill. So your question is very on point. When we do see like template generation being really beneficial for clients, it's when you're doing something like an NDA. And if your business can establish using their NDA over using the third parties, allowing your business partners to generate an NDA on their own is so easy. And that's a good one to start with if you were trying to think of template generation. But it doesn't work for everybody because not everybody uses a standard MSA or other type of SaaS agreement or something that's really templated. And that's okay. That should be supported in the system you select.
Yeah, 100%. Thanks, Haley. And thanks for the question. Great question.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Let's wrap up here. Haley and David, I want to kick it back to you for final remarks, and then we will end our session. Haley, do you want to give us some final remarks?
It was wonderful to have this time to present with you all. I enjoyed being with In-House Connect so much, and I'd love to connect with all of you. I put my LinkedIn in the chat further up, but this is something I'm passionate about. I also have started a group called Party of One Legal Operations. So if there's anybody that's a solo legal operations person, we'd love to have you. I was thinking I'm going to get them involved with Shai at some point so he can have them on as a little core group. But we'd love to have you in there just talking about all the things that you experience as one person running operations for your team. But it's so nice to meet you all again, and thank you for this time. Thank you for having us, Shai. And David, loved presenting with you as always.
Yeah, hopefully we can meet up in Raleigh or New
Yes.
York at one of these great parties that Shai is hosting. Yeah, I really appreciate you having us here, Shai, and wonderful. I actually didn't realize how international this group was. It's really cool to be able to connect with people all over the world in this way. And I really appreciate people dialing in at nighttime to hear us today. I think that's super, super cool. Looking forward to doing more. If anybody's interested in hearing more about what I think of as modern legal leadership, please contact me. I put my email in the chat. I put my LinkedIn in the chat. And of course, if you want to hear more about LawVu, got a lot of time for that. I think it's a really compelling way to transform your function and to modernize it. So thanks, everybody, and see you soon.
All right. Thank you so much, David. Haley, thank you, LawVu, and thank you, everybody, for tuning in far and wide, near and far. It was a wonderful program. We will break here. I hope everybody has a wonderful Monday. Hope to see you at the next IHC webinar. And if not, have a great week.